done, the development that they've done. And look, you got the transfer portal is open for another, 8 days, 10 days. So you have to still hold your breath, and you still have to let your palms be sweaty, and you still have to hope that agents are not answering too many phone calls and things like that. But right now, the outlook is positive. As of January 6th, 2026, the outlook for Utah football is very positive. And so we're just going to operate under that assumption right now. And it's, I think, a good day that Morgan Scalley can sit down and we have some context. The media that has gathered, the dignitaries, the people that have their invitations to this thing, they're going to sit down and they're going to be like, all right, what is Morgan, like, what should we say to him? What can he say to us? What do we know about what's going on right now with Utah football? And what we know is that he's done some good work. Plenty of work left to be done, but some good work so far on retaining guys, on keeping people from entering the portal. So far. I think he's done some good work in backfilling this assistant coaching staff so far. I'm positive about the Jordan Gross thing. I had another conversation last night about Kevin McGibbon and what we should expect from Kevin McGibbon, and I'm even more optimistic about that. Bullish on Mark Ottawai staying and what that means for the running back position, which, of course, is one of Utah's, heritage foundational positions. When you think of the identity of Utah football, they're not Utah football if they don't have a solid running back and a solid run game. That's just, at least my version of Utah football going back to the McBride era. That's what you had. That's what you had. So, wanted to do a little exercise today. If you will entertain me, if you will indulge me. Wanted to do a little exercise today based on a New York Times article, which, look, we know that these numbers are very, very loose. We know that we can look around this landscape of college football and assign whatever value to whatever position, and certain players are going to be complete outliers here. But I just tweeted this, and I want everyone to put on their GM hats. I want everyone to put on their GM hats this morning, and I want people to think about how you would distribute funds. Assume a $20 million salary cap, okay? I'm assuming a $20 million salary cap, even though the revenue sharing number is actually more like 16 mil. It's not real when you're talking about 20.5. 16 million is probably more realistic, but I'm assuming, right or wrong, I'm assuming that there are people out there in the booster world, that there are people out there in the business owner world that you can call if you're Morgan Scalley. You could call if you're the University of Utah, and you can say, hey, look, we have this revenue share split, okay? We got it's going to be $22 million, $23 million next year, and we're giving this much to football, but we might need a little bit more. I think you're not in the Texas Tech world where Cody Campbell's giving you a blank check. You're not Oregon where Uncle Phil is just like, yeah, man, I'll pay $100 million for the roster. Just give me a damn national championship before I die. But I think that the demise of Utah football financially, or the lack of booster support, is a greatly exaggerated narrative in a tiny, tiny little corner of the dark web for Utah football. I think that there are people, I'm looking at names on the side of the building as I'm here in this field club, that they're going to answer the phone call and they're going to say, man, if it takes that to get Devin to come back, if it takes that to get Bird Ficklin to come back, if it takes that to get Jackson Benny to come back, if John Hall's going to leave unless I give him this, all right, let me see what I can do. I really believe that. I've had conversations that tell me that that is the case. I believe that from an intuitive standpoint. So we're going to do an exercise here. James is an on-air math whiz. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. So he's going to help me with this. But we're going to play GM today, all right? Assume a $20 million salary cap, and let's see if we could put something together that makes sense from a competitive standpoint for Utah football, knowing, by the way, that the bare minimum of what you need to be a competitive conference championship level team is you got to have like 30 guys, and that's a tiny number. That's like the bare minimum number. 30 guys that you trust on game day. 11 starters on offense, 11 starters on defense. Of course, when we're talking about the type of offenses that are actually successful in college football now, that means you got to have probably more than just a couple of wide receivers. So you got to have like 4. You got to have 2 running backs instead of 1. Better if you have 3. You got to have 2 tight ends. Better if you have 3. You got to have 7 offensive linemen you could trust, but you'll get by with 5. On the defensive side of the ball, well, your base package is probably going to be a nickel situation now because of what other teams are running, but you better be ready with a rotational defensive lineman. You better be ready with a third linebacker to bring in. If they go jumbo, you got to be able to go jumbo too. Now, those guys that are on the fringes, you don't have to pay them necessarily a lot of money, but I don't think you could pay them $0 either. I'm not sure. So let's be GMs today. James, are you ready to be a GM on the Sean O'Connell Show on a Tuesday?
I would love to be the Sean O'Connell Show GM. It's my dream job, actually.
Okay.
So I was born ready.
That's interesting because you kind of are the GM for the show. So congrats on achieving your dream, James.
Yes.
I'm very, very proud.
Let's go.
All right. So, again, these numbers come from New York Times article, according to the cost of doing business in the transfer portal right now. And various publications put these things out last year, heading into the season, et cetera, et cetera. We're talking about right now the estimate on the cost of doing business. And there's some broad ranges here, okay? So we're going to do our best. And we're going to assume a $20 million cap, $16 million coming from revenue share, and we'll say $4 or $5 million more coming from the boosters that like to write a check, or begrudgingly at least write a check. We'll start right at the top, James. $1 million is the floor for a starting caliber quarterback in Power 4 football. And it goes all the way up, according to New York Times, to $4 million. We know realistically the outliers are higher than that. Brendan Sorsby is on a billboard right now in Times Square as the next Texas Tech guy. He's got at least $5 million. Sam Levitt and his camp are allegedly seeking $5 to $7 million. Sounded like they were going to get that from Kentucky, and then Kentucky changed their mind, and they went with the Nebraska commit instead, so that's a whole nother storyline. Bryce Underwood, who we're going to play some sound from Kyle Whittingham on the Dan Patrick Show. Bryce Underwood has committed to come back to Michigan. Bryce Underwood ain't doing it for $2 million. Right? He's one of these outliers. Arch Manning is going to be in the Heisman Trophy conversation all offseason, all season next year. Arch Manning's not making $4 million. He's making like 6 or 7. So this range is already incorrect, but we're going to go with it just for the sake of the exercise. $1 million to $4 million, James. How much are you paying the starting quarterback at the University of Utah? You are the GM.
$1 to $4 million. I'm gonna be a little conservative because of what you just said to open the show, and that I'm on board with too, and understanding don't have the funds that Kyle Whittingham has now at Michigan, for example, right? So I'm gonna say, I'm not gonna say the very bottom one, but I might say 1.5, 2 tops.
All right. Let's say we're gonna give. Let's be conservative, okay? Now, we've had conversations with Devin Dampier. If we're going to use Devin Dampier as our guy, right? Devin Dampier ain't doing it for $1 million, all right? He's getting better offers than that right now. So I want to keep Devin here. Devin's going to give us a hometown discount. Let's say we're going to give Devin Dampier $2 million. You comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that. And whether that's – if you have to choose between Devin and Bird, I mean, obviously – I would like to pay whatever it takes to keep them both here. But if you have to choose between one of those two, whether it's Devin or Bird, I'm comfortable paying $2 million to one of the quarterbacks. So we'll say Devin.
But only one of the quarterbacks.
What are you saying? You're saying?
Well, James, you
combine. We do combine.
No.
We do too.
No, I'm saying we got to pay Devin too. This is the first major hurdle we have to get over. Devin Dampier, if you want him to stay, you got to pay him $2 million. So are you saying, Devin, I'll give you 2, Bird? Thanks for your services. It's been nice knowing you. Because that's not an acceptable outcome for your fan base.
I think I would say I think I would say 2 for the guy that's going to be your starter. We'll say Devin. And then 1 for Bird. So combined out of the 4 million average of a Power 4 starting quarterback, you're paying 3
Okay.
for 2.
So it's $3 million. So our $20 million salary cap, we've already given out more than 10% of it on the quarterback position, and that's fine.
Doesn't that make sense though? Like quarterbacks,
it does.
They take up a big part of the salary cap in the NFL. Like they should here.
More than 10% in the NFL situation. So I think you're right. Okay, so we've allotted $3 million, and we're being very conservative. $3 million is going to Devin Dampier and to Bird Ficklin. Now let's zoom out a little bit, and let's talk about whether we think that is really enough, James. Like, not just for our exercise. In the real world we live in, is that enough that you get to have your cake and eat it too? Because that's what we're asking for with Devin and Bird.
I think Bryce Underwood staying at Michigan really helps Utah's cause.
I think it helps Utah
Doesn't it?
Immensely. Absolutely, yes. Now, my only fear here with the thing that gives me pause is that if you're Jason Beck and you want Bird Ficklin or you want Devin Dampier, and let's say you want Bird, okay, just for the sake of the kind of like pseudo backup argument, you're like, look, this Bryce Underwood kid is probably going to be my guy this year, but did you not have fun scoring all those touchdowns for Utah last year, Bird? Did you not like the role you played for Utah last year? And if I'm Bird and his agent, I'm saying, well, I don't want that to be my role again. Yes, I loved it. So I think Michigan will continue their overtures. Hey, you'll be one snap away no matter what, and you'll be one snap away at Michigan. And by the way, Utah's offered you $1 million. Thanks for telling us. That's chump change for us here at Michigan. How about same role, same offer, but it's going to be 1.5 or 2? That's my concern here. I do think you're right. I think that Bryce Underwood staying at Michigan helps Utah a lot, but I don't think it completely gets you out of the woods because worst case scenario, if you're the Michigan staff, is you're offering Bird Ficklin the same role he had this past year at Utah as not just a backup, but like a package use type of guy, a second option at quarterback. So when we go back to the exercise, and we've decided $3 million allotted to the quarterback position, split up between Dev and Bird. Is it really enough to keep them? I think my answer is more likely no, it's probably not. So I'm up in the offer, James.
Yeah, so right? I think that too, which is why I was saying if you only come away with one, that's okay to spend 2 on your starter, but yeah, let's up the offer. Why not? It's not our money.
So here's what we're gonna do. All right, they have the same agent, right? Bird and Devin have the same agent, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. It could have contributed to why they've been so close, but that probably would have happened anyway.
So let's just say, you know what? We're going to push. It's not the real top of the market. It's the top of the New York Times market. I'm allotting $4 million to my quarterback position. That's 2.5, 1.5. That's 3 and 1. That's 2 and 2. However you guys decide, I'm giving $4 million to my quarterback position. I think then I have a shot at keeping both. Is that fair?
I think so. And Trevor Riley, who was a guest with us all season long, he pretty much said you realistically have to. He was saying you have to probably commit $5 million to your quarterback room, to your starter and backup.
Oof, that's
a
lot of money.
So I think 4. I mean, 4 feels like a lot. Like you're gonna give on average the even money to the backup as you are the starter. But I mean, you probably have to, knowing that Bird and Devin were pretty equal when they both had to play in this year. When Bird was called upon, he gave you close to equal production to what Devin did, and he has a lot more eligibility left. I mean, you probably have to do it.
And again, we're not the GMs where this is an exercise here, but I think that what you could run into potentially as a Utah football fan out there listening, and you put your GM hat on, you got to be honest with yourself. If I offer Bird Ficklin significantly less than what Devin is getting, he's probably like, oh, really? Okay. Well, there's a lot of other teams that might like me. And if I offer Devin only what the backup is getting, Devin might also be like, whoa, hold up. You're going to pay my backup the same as you're going to pay me? That's crazy. So already you've run into like a pretty significant problem that we're just going to solve by being like, okay, here's $4 million. Let's see if we can help out. For the sake of moving on in the conversation, the next highest paid, according to the New York Times, is the edge rushers. Okay. Now, John Henry Daly was going to be the biggest ticket item and probably still is being talked to and recruited by the University of Utah. He's going to be very near, as an All-American on the resume, he's going to be very near what New York Times calls the ceiling, $500,000 to $2 million for edge rushers, okay? So let's assume John Henry Daly is gone because that's the information we have right now. And let's talk about the defensive ends that you've got with eligibility, okay? Lance Holtzclaw looked really good in that bowl game. Paul Fitzgerald still has some eligibility. Cash Dillon played a lot this year, and I thought looked pretty darn good. So let's just go with those three guys. Let's go with Lance Holtzclaw and Cash Dillon, just for the sake of sticking with starters here, or what we believe to be projected starters.
Well, and real quick, just some more context with Lance Holtzclaw. Brechterfield, if I'm not mistaken, was at Washington when Holtzclaw was at Washington, right?
I believe that's right.
So you think about that too. Maybe Holtzclaw's like, okay, excited and motivated to have a coach that hopefully he had a great relationship with in his time at Washington, and maybe that helps elevate his play a little bit too. Just keep that in mind.
Okay, so we'll try to speed this up because I'm always slow and talk too much, but we're Lance Holtzclaw is getting how much money, knowing that you've got $4 million you peeled off already for the quarterbacks. How much you given to the defensive end, Lance Holtzclaw and Cash Dillon?
Cash Dillon, and you're saying that the top is $2 million.
Yeah,
according
$2
to the
million
New York
is
Times?
The New York Times list. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say you probably have to at least do 1.5 combined, right?
Okay, so let's do that. Let's do 750 and 750.
Yeah.
We're now up to, and I think that's realistic. Both of these guys showed some promise. Neither of them were wildly productive, all conference, all American. Like I think they clearly have put themselves into a place where you could say, I'm comfortable if he's my starter, but he doesn't have a crazy amount of production so far that I have to pay for. His resume does not dictate that I got to pay a lot of money for him. And by the way, this is just for retention. This is not even keeping the Wolves at bay, people. This is where it gets so complicated. All right, offensive tackles. Now, Kelvin Obot, he came down from high school. You already were offering him. He's the highest rated recruit in program history. Offensive tackles, according to the New York Times, are $600,000 to $1.3 million. And you had the Outland Trophy winner last year. You had a projected first-round pick opposite them. I believe that Utah committed more, on average, $1.3 million to those guys. I think that we were talking about.
That.
I think that those guys were probably $3 million, $4 million combined. But let's go back to where we're at today with Kelvin Obot, who's going to be a day one starter most likely, and opposite him, you've got a bunch of different options with guys that got a decent amount of time this year. They like Keith Olson. They like Roger Alderman. They like Zaraway Williams. So on one side, you're paying Kelvin Obot, let's just be honest with ourselves and say 1.5. Is that fair, James?
Yeah, I would think that he would get higher than the average.
Okay, now we're up to $7 million, by the way, off of our salary cap, and we have accounted for a grand total of 5 players. All right. On the opposite side,
this is easy. This is an easy job. Oh, see, it's so easy.
On the opposite side, let's go with that 600,000, shall we? Because none of these guys are necessarily like big names. Is that fair? Can we do that?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So $7.6 million before we get to the interior offensive line. Interior offensive linemen are called. They're not even on the list. What the heck? They're not even on the New York Times list. Let's just say you got to pay them $250,000 each. Okay, can we do that?
We technically still have room in the revenue share budget.
We have plenty of room.
Yeah, so absolutely, $250K.
But we haven't got to wide receivers or running backs yet.
Yeah,
wide receivers are $500,000 to $1 million. J.J. Buchanan's going to demand $1 million. I'm not saying no to that.
Yeah, he was great all year, but his final impression that he gave you, he was probably the best game he had all year in that Vegas Bowl. So yes, he's give him the $1 million.
What about Larry Simmons? He's got another year. We saw some really nice things from Larry. He started to develop a little chemistry with the quarterbacks that we are keeping, mind you.
Yeah, red zone threat especially. I really like Larry Simmons.
Twinkle toes on the sideline. I love me some Larry Williams in a pressure type situation.
I do love Larry Simmons. I don't know if I pay him as much as I paid J.J. Buchanan though.
Okay, so you want to give based
on
the range
$750? Are we saying a little higher or lower than that?
Let's you know what? Because we have to be a little bit conservative. Let's say we're going to give him the 500. We're going to give him the wide receiver minimum of $500,000.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
So now $1.5 million gives us 2 wide receivers, and we know we need more than that. But let's just, for the sake of the exercise, we are now up to about $10 million on our salary cap with quarterbacks, offensive line, 2 wide receivers, just 2.
Your top 2.
Okay. All right, I'm feeling pretty good. I think we're in a good situation right now. Running back, $400,000 to $900,000. Wayshawn Parker, I think, is going to be demanding closer to the high end of that scale.
He's going to ask for I would guess that he's going to demand $1 million, a little higher than that, and Utah's going to have a hard time not paying him a little bit higher, I think.
Okay, so we're going over the cap maybe for we're going $1 million,
or for the exercise we do $900K, but I think he might end up getting a little bit more because he probably has that kind of leverage.
Okay, how about we do this? We commit $1.5 million to our running back room because you can't just put all the eggs in the Wayshawn Parker basket. You got to figure out if you can keep Daniel Bray. Nakari Rogers doesn't have any more eligibility, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Racine Gilroy is already off to LSU.
You have
he's going to play for Lane Kiffin.
LaMarcus Bell coming in as a freshman too. Is that the top Oregon high school running back?
Okay, so $1.5 million to the running back room. We feeling good about that?
Yeah.
All right, now we're about $12 million, and I think our offense looks pretty good. Oh, but wait, there's more. We need a tight end, James.
And we're calling J.J. Buchanan wide receiver, so not tight end.
Yeah, I'm not going to call him a tight end until he gains 25 more pounds.
Yeah,
sorry.
He's got the height for it, but yeah, not quite the build.
So at tight end, you've got to commit, according to the New York Times, anywhere from $300,000 to $900,000. Let's say we call Hunter Andrews a tight end for the sake of the exercise.
Yeah.
All right? Young guy, a lot of upside, versatility in the offense.
And I hope he stays healthy this year.
I really hope he stays healthy.
Please take care of yourself.
Loves a player like this. Now that tight end, Hunter Andrews coming off an injury probably can't demand super top dollar. So let's say $500,000 to Hunter Andrews or whoever that tight end is. Are we okay with that?
Or do we just be super aggressive? Hey, prove it to me, Hunter Andrews. $300K.
I don't. I wouldn't run that risk. I'm going to go 500.
500. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so just for the starters, just for like an actual starting 11, James, we are what? We are $13 million in to our $20 million salary cap, $12.5 million in to our $20 million salary cap, just for the starting offense with no depth, with zero depth. Do you see the challenge that is faced by teams that are in the Power Four and expected to compete in the Power Four, but don't have the bottomless resources of Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas Tech? Now that we have just using these very loose and pretty arbitrary parameters of the New York Times article, do we see how challenging this is? We are more than halfway through our salary cap on just the starting offense. Not recruits that we expect to be a big deal later on, not depth players that we know we're going to use, not the 3, 4, 5 wide receivers that at least have to have a little smattering of something. We're just talking about projected starters on our offense. No kicker, no defense, no punt returner, no nothing in that range. And we are just already starting to be like, oh, where do you got to pinch these pennies? Do we see how challenging this is right now? GM / personnel manager is now just as important in the college football world as head coach. Right behind him. Yes. Absolutely bananas. And look,
we haven't even looked at defense yet,
we haven't even looked at the defense yet,
which is the calling card, the signature of this program. So of course, those guys are going to demand a lot of money. Morgan Scalley, defensive-minded head coach, former defensive coordinator, is going to want to pay those guys top dollar.
Yeah,
I guess we don't have that. Yeah,
I guess we did give some money to the edge rushers already because they're the second most expensive.
You're right. We've talked a little bit about defense, but mostly offense.
But we've talked mostly offense, and we still have to have corners, 3 of them, by the way, because you're running nickel all the time. Corners, safeties, interior defensive linemen, and linebackers. And by the way, Jonnu Hall might be the best returning player on your defense next year. You absolutely cannot afford to let that guy leave. So this is the situation we're in. We'll dive back into this exercise a little bit later on in the show, but I wanted to at least walk myself, and hopefully our listeners found it interesting, through just like the very, very color outside the lines, loose guidelines of what it takes to field a competitive roster in college football right now. Puts you, as you're trying to do this 2-quarterback thing, as you're trying to retain the highest rated recruit in the history of your program who's only a freshman, who we think is going to be a day 1 starter, like, you've got to do all of this. And you got to do it on not quite a shoestring budget, because there are teams out there who aren't even able to meet the full revenue share cap. But you are Utah. You are Utah football. You're Morgan Scalley taking over a program now that everyone's looking at the personnel and saying, well, I know you lost some assistant coaches, but you should win this league, or you should compete to win this league. And I don't want to hear any excuses that you didn't have enough money in the NIL world. That's where we're at today, getting ready for Morgan Scalley's introductory press conference. As long as we're talking about coaches and we're talking about official Utah properties here, the Alex Smith Coaches Show, we're going to replay that tonight. So if you missed it last night, or if you experienced some of the technical difficulties that our listeners did last night, we're going to replay the Alex Jensen Coaches Show tonight after the drive. All right, we're starting off hot on a Tuesday. We're going to have some fun here as we build toward the Morgan Scalley introductory press conference. Gordy Chiesa next. We've got a little Jonathan Tavernari for Red and Blue coming up at noon, and then Jeff Schwartz at 1. Nobody better to talk to about Jordan Gross and what he could be as a coach than Jeff Schwartz, because Jordan Gross took Jeff Schwartz under his wing as a rookie and helped him to have a decade-long career in the NFL. Sean O'Connell Show just getting started on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792.1 FM. We welcome in Gordy Chiesa, our basketball insider, brought to you by Aladdin Industries, your Utah Velux dealer. Gordy, welcome again. How are you, sir?
Sean, I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Let's talk a little Utah Jazz last night against the Portland Trail Blazers. Interesting game. Jazz dug themselves a big hole in the first half, especially with just kind of sloppy play, missed shots, especially close to the basket, around the rim. As you're watching that game, can you tell me why it was going down like that? It felt like they were getting good shots and just not getting them to fall.
Yeah, they were hurried. The shots were basically hurried in that game, and they basically panicked shot as far as not following through. And add to that, they were making a lot of three-point shots, the Trailblazers, so every possession to start that game was even more magnified versus settling down, try to shoot in either individual rhythm or team harmony, and that's when you really score the ball at a much more fluid pace. And the Trailblazers, to their credit, they were the aggressor, and that was a big factor in the game. And let's not forget that the Trailblazers, they're in the Jazz division, and I thought it was shown today that the Jazz right now are 0-7 in division play. So visualize the NFL if you were in a division and you're winless so far. And so in the Jazz division, for the listeners, it's the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, and the Trailblazers. And so they've got to improve themselves as far as winning games in the division, because that's one of the tiebreakers someday when heading to the playoffs.
Do you like the role that Isaiah Collier is playing right now? We talked a lot about him coming back and what that does for Keontae. Keontae ended up with a good game again last night, below his season average in terms of scoring and output. But do you like what they're doing with Isaiah Collier, not only for Keontae's sake, but for the entire team?
Yeah, very much. He's pass happy. Last night's game, 10 points, 8 assists, but it's when he got them. He's a good leader. He knows how to play the position, and he gets players organized. Your job as a point guard in the NBA is to, one, get everybody organized before you make that first entry pass, whether it's on the wing or at the elbow. And then the second part of that is that you've got to be able to swing the ball. And the third part is that the ability to make an open shot. So I've been saying for decades, Sean, that an NBA winning point guard, your world changes every 24 seconds. And within the 24 seconds, your role changes. So you go from distributor and a ball mover into maybe a shot maker when it's a low shot clock as far as under 5 seconds. And so it takes a lot of mental skills. And Isaiah Collier, he has it. I like when he plays in the game and they play off the ball Keontae George, because he's more of a natural scorer, and it really helps the Jazz as far as scoring, but also having more fluidity.
I thought the broadcast team did a good job last night talking about the significance of the Portland Trailblazers for Jusuf Nurkic and what that franchise did for Nurk and how it affected his growth and things like that. When you have guys that are going back and they're playing against a franchise that they have a connection with, or they have close friends in that franchise or on that team or whatever, is there any difference in the way that a person is coached for that particular game, or just even the conversation you have in the locker room before that particular game?
Well, it was in season that year he was traded, then absolutely you talk about it, that this guy's going to come at you, right away, coming at you. So be alert to try to guard him, keep him off the boards, or challenge his shot, or if he's a defensive liability, attack him off the dribble. Now, as the years go on, it's lesser and lesser, because that player now used to play in your team or for your franchise, but now is on the other franchise's organization, and it's not as much as glaring, and the emotional part of it. Usually speaking, when you get traded, you feel either jilted by the former team or by the new team. You want to prove to them that they made the right decision for trading for you. It's an interesting phenomenon.
Gordy, you wanted to talk about short-term, 10-day contracts.
Oh, absolutely. It started yesterday. And, Sean, here's the numbers. Are you sitting down there at the Utes right now getting ready for the press conference? for Morgan Scally. A 10-day contract this year, so visualize the guy that was in the G League but not on a two-way contract. So someone like Dylan Jones, former Weber State first-round draft pick, plays for ironically, the Portland Trailblazers G League team. Just say he gets a 10-day contract. Is that in 10 days, so he'd be a second-year player, he'd make $131,000 for 10 days. 131,970. If you're a rookie, you make $73,000. If you're a first-year player, you make $117,000 for 10 days. Now, if you're a 10-year veteran, the way the rules are, if someone signs, we'll say a 10-year veteran, he will make for the 10 days $208,000. And so it is absolutely a lot of money for 10 days. And usually speaking, those guys, if you're a younger guy, they want to get a look at you, meaning the present team. If you're a mid-tier veteran, they think that you can play in the team. They just want to see if you're in shape or not for those 10 days. They're going to try to either assign you for a second 10-day. And where the rules are, you can only sign with the parent team 2 consecutive 10-day contracts. After the 20 days, you have to then either be signed for the rest of the season or you're being waived. So it started yesterday. It's a huge factor as far as teams.
Who's your favorite guy that started on that kind of like very uncertain footing, but ended up making himself a real presence in the NBA?
Roger Bell. He started a 10-day contract a long, long time ago, and then worked his way up into really being a really solid jazz player. And then with the Phoenix Suns, he was a huge part of them trying to get to the Western Conference Finals. He became a knockdown three-point shooter and really all-defensive player as far as either first or second team. So he'd be the most classic example of doing it. And as other players in the NBA, is that most players in the G League, for whatever reason, are miscast. And you can make a discussion point is that you could change the NBA roster literally daily with guys in the G League, especially numbers 13, 14, and 15 on your roster. And so that's what happens is that the 10-day contracts for a lot of players, Sean, are the entry level for that player to be talked about among the coaches. See, a lot of times in the NBA or the NFL, the personnel people talk about the players all the time, but it's not the coaches because in season they're coaching their team. But once you're with a guy for 10 days, you're around him more, then you're going to say, well, I never knew this guy was really that fleet-footed, or this guy was a knockdown shooter, because now it's more visual, and you can see the player that, or add to that, this guy really is a good listening ability, that when we say something in the walkthrough practice session, he listens and he gets it. So it's more of a combination of all the above that those guys might get into a game and play well, and in a year later, we'll get a standard contract.
Gordy Chase is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things NBA. So when we're talking, staying on this, when we're talking about the way that people are miscast and the vision that a particular franchise has for them or a particular coaching staff has for them, the solution is that usually found through the player, through the player's agent, through some I don't know, Gordy Chiesa type guru who just has a better recognition for what the max potential could be. I mean, we're sitting here at Utah football, a press conference. That's one of the ways that this coaching staff has kind of made its hay is they recruit a wide receiver, they turn him into a defensive end, and he ends up going to the NFL that way. Who's responsible for finding the fix for these individuals?
The personnel people find the talent, and then the coaching staff brings the best out of that talent. And that's a combination of both. And the winning franchises consistently have both parties work in harmony. And you always can't agree on players, but the majority of the players you absolutely agree on. And Sean, we're talking also a thing called intangibles, that everyone can see visually a person's talent, quickness, serious hops, fast twitch motion. You can see it visually, but it's the intangibles that players have. I just described to the ultimate Nikolai Jokic. So someone like that, he wouldn't pass the athletic test of most teams. But for a basketball player, yes, he does. And that's where the better organizations, they get it right consistently. And so it's on the coach to develop the talent, but it's on the personnel people to bring the talent in front of the coaches. That's why, Sean, it's so important. Your position coach in the NFL, but also in the NBA, the assistant coaches, they're the ones basically that drive the improvement of the players. But you've got to be realistic about a player's ability. And as far as the head coach, besides winning, his job is to hide the player's non-strengths during a game, so that the competition cannot expose his lack of foot speed, his lack of length, or if he's a wobbly shooter, get him off the ball side and get him on the opposite side where it becomes now a velocity cutter. These are all things that smart coaching, what they do with the players.
So we're a month away from the trade deadline. Do you anticipate that this is a wild trade season, or we end up with the status quo?
Wild trade season, yes. Because remember, there'll be a fire sale, Sean. Just like last year, you and I talked about it on the air in depth. So here's some teams that are losing, and that some of their players, especially if it's the last year of a contract, and their agent is a very formidable person, that their agent's going to try to ask the team of that player who's losing, can you trade my client? Knowing that, Sean, come July 1st, which is the magical date in the NBA, that same agent has other clients that the losing team wants to have on their team to make them more successful. So there'll be a fire sale with the Nets, the Wizards, the Pacers, the Kings, the Pelicans, maybe the Grizzlies, maybe I'm pausing for a second, maybe Atlanta Hawks, maybe the Bucks, maybe the Bulls. So there'll be some players in those teams that will be traded between now and the trading deadline, which is a Thursday, February 5th. So it's going to be interesting. There'll be some trades, yes. But what about in Jazz basketball? Any trades, you think?
You tell me. I mean, Lowry's name is going to get thrown into a bunch of stuff. I don't think he's going anywhere.
Agreed. Absolutely not.
Walker
I prayed to the trading gods, please don't trade it, because he's a tremendous player. You cannot find anybody in the draft who's going to average 27 points a game, 8 boards, knockdown three-point shooter, 88% foul shooter, and most of all, never says a word in a positive way. He just plays the game. He's wiry tough. And so also he's in his prime. And the last part about it, like any business, what's it going to cost? There's cost certainty. You know his contract. It's this year plus 3 more. He finishes July 1st, 2029 season. This is what's going to cost. He's very good. He's worth every penny as far as in the NBA, as far as a lexicon.
What's your list today, Gordy?
All right, but let's say, Sean, we've had a record amount of people scoring 50 points or more. So this season, Sean, 11 players already have scored 50-plus points in an NBA game. The most recent has been Jaylen Brown, a 50-point gem versus the Clippers on Saturday night. So I redid this list. This is the most career 50-point games by individual. And it's only regular season games, not playoffs. It's a very short list. 50-point games career-wise. Number 10 all-time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He did it 10 times. 9th all-time. Allen Iverson did it 11 times. Tied for 8th, Rick Barry and LeBron James, 8th place. They did it 14 times. Tied for 6th place, 2 guards, Steph Curry and Dame Lillard. They both did it 15 times, 50 points or more. 5th all-time, Elgin Baylor did it 17 times. Number 3, tied, Kobe Bryant and James Harden, who's Sean, the only lefty in his list. They've done it 25 times, 50 points or more games. Number 2 all-time is Michael Jordan. He did it 31 times. And the number 1 player of the most ever 50-point games is Wilt Chamberlain. He did it 118 times in his career, which is 87 more than the second place holder of Michael Jordan.
Oh, man. I wish so bad Wilt Chamberlain could be in today's NBA just to see how dominant that would look.
He was scored at age 50 or so. He passed away at age 63 back in 1999. I remember the day he passed away. It was during the preseason. I remember Jerry Sloan and I were talking about Wilt Chamberlain because Jerry played against him. And Jerry used to say to me that he was almost impossible to move out of the lane. And that when he ran the floor, usually speaking, Jerry would try to take a charge on, players. But against Wilt, he was very hesitant. Very hesitant. And,
understandably so.
Wilt, oh, absolutely. He was, again, for the young listeners, and I'm truly, when I say this, I'm pausing for effect, is that he was 7'1", 275 pounds with a 34-inch waist. So his body was really unbelievably proportionally upper body strength. And one time he high jumped 6'11" in sneakers without even practicing. 6'11", high jumper in sneakers. Sean, old school, PF Flyers, old school pro kids.
Yeah. He's an alien.
He's an alien. And speaking of, but in Jazz franchise aliens, just quickly, is that who are the Jazz leaders in most 50-point games? Just two names quickly and one current. Adrian Danley did it 6 times, 50 points or more, and Karl Malone did it 4 times. Larry Marketing of the Jazz presently had a 51-point masterpiece versus the Suns this season on October 27th in a Jazz home overtime win. So Larry Marketing also joins that group with 51 points as far as that. Donovan Mitchell did it one time in a masterpiece in the NBA playoff bubble back in 2020. He had 57 points in an incredible performance against the Denver Nuggets, however, unfortunately, in a losing course. Thus, Sean, 50 points or more, it's really an exclusive company.
Gordy, it's always great catching up with you. Thanks for your time again today.
Thanks, Sean. Peace out. Stay well.
Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA guru, brought to you by our friends at Aladdin Industries, your Utah Velux dealer. Take a quick one here. We're broadcasting live today from the Layton Field Club up at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Morgan Scalley's introductory press conference, official introductory press conference, will take place at 2 o'clock today. We'll stay here on air for it. You can listen to it right here on ESPN 700. Don't go anywhere. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk. Sean O'Connell Show, hour number 1 coming to a close here. Brian Regan taking over the Delta Center February 14th on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Want to send you with a pair of tickets to the show. Right here on my show all week long, we'll be giving away tickets during Topical Trivia, which is coming up in hour 45-ish. So stay tuned and give yourself a chance to win Brian Regan tickets. Utah starting to get active in the transfer portal here, as is every team in the country. Redshirt freshman defensive lineman from the University of Wyoming, a kid named Lucas Samsula, is he's coming to Utah. This is a guy that feels like he is the perfect fit for Utah's defense. And we're going to see how it works out with Luther Ellis, but, I mean, the guy looks kind of like Luther Ellis. He's from Plano, Texas. In high school, he was a first-team 6A tight end, and they put some weight on him up at the University of Wyoming. And, man, he's got real athleticism, big size, 6'4". He's like 305 pounds now. And he's transferring to the University of Utah. I think that's going to be a good one for the Utes. And this is obviously one of those positions where you've had a little bit of injury attrition these last few years, and especially this last year, you got kind of the most that you could out of the defensive line. But we saw in those last 3 games or so, man, it got a little bit too thin. You need somebody to help fill out this rotation. And Dallas Vakalaki is entertaining other offers now, so you got to make sure that you're backfilling. I like the upside and potential of this kid from Wyoming, and it's just the perfect kind of fit for Luther Ellis's position room. So good on Utah for pulling in a guy like this.
So, sorry, OC, is speaking of, you said we'll see what happens with Luther Ellis. Do we haven't heard anything? That's got to be, got to feel like he's sticking around, right? Like
he's not. Yeah, he's staying. He's
okay.
Not going anywhere. Luther Ellis is not going to be in the transfer portal, so to speak, as a coach. Kyle Whittingham has filled out his coaching staff, and that would be the only real threat.
Right, that's what I would think. Yeah.
Let's see. Luke Wells, by the way, is coming down to be the tight ends coach for Kevin McGivern on this Utah staff. That was the last position that needed to be filled after Freddie Whittingham decided to follow his big brother, which all of us expected him to. Luke Wells spent the last 6 seasons at Utah State, worked inside receivers and tight ends, spent time as a co-offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach, so he's worn multiple different hats at Utah State, which was his last coaching job in college football, and that's going to be the guy who helps out Kevin McGivern with the tight ends. So, again, I think that you have kind of a situation right now where there's no obvious heir apparent to what Dallin Bentley was able to do in the offense this year with the traditional they like the Luke Clemens kid. And beyond that, you got to put size on whoever else you're looking at right now. J.J. Buchanan, I think, is just going to be a wide receiver. I can't imagine that they spend a lot of time trying to make him into a tight end unless naturally this offseason through the lifting program he ends up, putting on 15, 20 pounds. Hunter Andrews is going to be that hybrid type player. But I'm really curious to see what the tight end position evolves into at the University of Utah, because Freddie Whittingham did just an unbelievable job with that group these last few years. So that's a loss, but one that Utah has now filled with Luke Wells coming down to be the tight ends coach. All right. That's the close of hour number 1. We'll get into some red and blue with Jonathan Tavernari. We'll focus a little bit on college hoops next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Time for a little red and blue. We go behind enemy lines, check in on things at BYU on the Sean O'Connell Show. This segment brought to you by our friends down at Murdoch Ford Santa Quin. The year-end sales are over, and now they're on to the first-of-the-year deals going on, including complimentary delivery of your vehicle to anywhere in Utah. Test that out. All right, you're listening in St. George right now. You're all the way up in Logan. Say, hey, I want that F-150, and I need you to bring it here to my front door. They'll do it at Murdoch Ford Santa Quin. Jonathan Tavernari, kind enough to join us again to lend us his expertise on all things college hoops, with a focus on BYU basketball, and, of course, they're having a great season so far. JT, how are you?
Sorry, Sean. I'm finishing my text message to Ben Murdoch saying, Ben, I need an F-150 delivered to my door. We were teammates. I better get that teammate discount.
Yeah, you have the extra leverage there that most people don't, but they'll take care of you at Murdoch Ford. That's what they're known for. All right, it's time for conference basketball play now for Utah, for BYU, for everyone in this Big 12 conference. BYU successful in the first official conference game of the year on the road at Kansas State, 83-73. What did you like that you saw in that game?
I like that BYU won. A lot of times I compare things to how when I was at BYU, and it reminded me a lot of, I think, 2009 when we were actually co-champions with Utah. I think it was Luke Neville's senior year, if I remember correctly. And that was, and the reason why I say that, Sean, is because that Utah team and my team, we just went on the road and won, right? Winning on the Big 12 is hard. Winning on the road on the Big 12 is twice as difficult. And a lot of times when you're aiming to win a championship, like that Utah team, like my BYU teams, you have to win on the road. And you just have to get the job done. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't really a great game. BYU started so-and-so, but, they just played harder. And what I mean by that is I don't want to discredit Kansas State, but BYU just played hard. And that means that if they do what they're supposed to do, they're going to win a lot of these games, right? And but it wasn't a pretty game. Richie Saunders, who is one of the featured players of the Big Three this year, didn't have a great shooting night. Rob Wright was okay. He was solid. He wasn't great. AJ was AJ, which, he actually became the leading scorer in the country after the game because Ken Boozer out of Duke, didn't have a particularly, great scoring game. And so another week goes by. BYU starts conference 1-0. Big game, big solid game tomorrow night at the Marriott Center before, the rivalry game up at the Hill on Saturday.
BYU out-rebounded Kansas State by double digits, largely because of the efforts of a guy we've talked about plenty in Keba Keita. I feel like they might be like virtually unbeatable if you can't match up with them in the rebound category. If you give especially offensive rebounds to the BYU Cougars and they get second and third opportunities on their scoring end, it feels like they're on their way to a really, really serious year. Is this a pace that they can sustain not just through the preseason, but in Big 12 play? Can they continue to rebound the way that they have been?
Well, listen, I was trying not to give away the map to victory, but, since you brought it up, I guess we got to talk about it. BYU really missed Keba in those, some of those really, less highlighted games in December when he was sick. And it was exactly because of what you talked about, Sean, offensive rebounding for BYU, rebounding in general. Keba is an absolute monster. He is strong. He's a physical specimen, but he knows the game. His basketball IQ is very high level. And so when Keba is not around or he's in foul trouble, BYU really misses that. Now, on the flip side, they now have, the midseason transfer from the G League, Abdullah. He goes by Beto. And obviously he's helping a lot. He actually led BYU in blocks this past Saturday. But, BYU is a team that they're solid defensively, but they're solid defensively as long as their main guys are playing. A lot of injuries have kind of slowed down this team in terms of the bench and their rotation. And, as much as it's talked about the Big Three, Kemba needs to be talked about just as much because he is the anchor of the defense. And because of his basketball savviness, he is able to a lot of times set a screen and roll to the basket. And a lot of times he's actually sealing, the guy that he's rolling on to allow the, AJ and Rob to get to the cup. And so Kemba is being a massive factor for BYU this year.
All right, I got to ask you about this because you mentioned it, and I was remiss last week when we touched on it. When you get a bounce-back player, right, like they have with Abdullah, and they've got and there's other teams all over college basketball that have kind of exploited this little loophole, and they've got the G League bounce-back guys, and Baylor grabbed someone who was a draft pick, and, there's plenty of individuals who have come over to NCAA basketball over the years after spending time in professional ranks overseas, and it's sort of a gray area. Well, very few people are better equipped than you to talk about the level of basketball that those guys experience overseas before they come play NCAA basketball. So even if we just focus on that little corner of the market, I mean, how reasonable is this, JT? How fair is it that someone can be like a top prospect over in Europe and then have an opportunity to come back and be a scholarship player, especially adding a mid-season is such a weird thing. Utah did it. BYU's done it. The NCAA is like, hey, we're not going to allow this anymore, but everyone's just kind of like, shut up. You can't stop it. So, give me a sense of what that actually is. Professional experience of any kind, and then you come back to college basketball.
So I'm going to try to say this, and especially because I am on a Utah Youth program, I'm going to try to say this in a very unbiased way, right? I want to look at Yegor Deming for a second. When Yegor Deming came to BYU, Yegor had played for Real Madrid, which, you guys know J.C. Carroll. He's a friend of the program. I know you guys have had him before. Big Utah State name, big Utah Hoops name, right? You guys also know Travis Hansen, now in the athletic department of BYU. So Real Madrid is arguably the greatest basketball club outside of the NBA. Very few people would, try to, go against that, right? Yegor was playing 99% for their youth team. Did Yegor ever play on a professional game? Yes, Yegor did. Yegor played, I believe, in one or two EuroLeague games, and then played, I think, in one or two ACB games, which is the Spanish league. Sean Green, a very dear, close friend of mine, a former Ute, actually played there, had a very good career in Europe. But why do I personally feel like it's okay for Yegor to play? Because Yegor never had a professional contract. Yegor had a contract with Real Madrid as a youth contract, meaning that Yegor got to practice and very sporadically play with Real Madrid in a junior sense, where he was never a full part-time of the team. He was a junior player, and there is that distinction in Europe. Now, in the case of Abdullah, the guy that just started playing for BYU, instead of going to college, as soon as he graduated high school, he went straight to the G League. He never signed a professional contract in terms of playing in the NBA. And so that distinction of like these two guys never had a full professional agreement in place. They never played in the NBA. They never played in the highest levels of Europe, aside from that junior contract, which is very different than a senior contract. I can tell you that because I signed, almost a dozen of them because of my career in Europe for over a decade. I totally understand the quote unquote amateurism side of things that allowed the NCAA to clear them eligible. Now let's flip to the situation at Baylor, and I don't remember his name of the guy, Sean. I don't know if you have. It's James something. I forgot his last name. And the kid from Baylor, he had been drafted number one, and he also had played for the Chicago Bulls. And actually, I take that back. He went through the draft. He wasn't drafted, but that kid actually went and played for the Barcelona senior team, and he played in the EuroLeague. Well, JT, but you just said Yegor played in the EuroLeague. Yeager never had a full-on professional contract because he had a junior contract. You have to deposit, you have to represent those contracts to the EuroLeague and to the Spanish League. The guy from Baylor was a full-time starter on the ACB and in the EuroLeague, not for half of a season, Sean, not for just a few games, for 2 full years. And so that to me is just nuts, because those will be the type of guys that myself and Luke Neville and Johnny Bryan and Lawrence Spora and all of the former Utes that have played there, that went to play overseas professionally, they all got to play against. And so it is crazy to me. Thankfully, they came to their senses, and the NCAA came to their senses. And the guy that was with the Bulls, that played some games with the Bulls this season and is on the G League, he is deemed ineligible to play in the NCAA. But, you know, a lot of the coaches, and I agree with them, there has to be some defined lines, because as you mentioned when you asked the question, Sean, there are a lot of loopholes out there this year, and people are taking advantage of them. And, you know, again, is it going to be something that whoever has the most money to hire the most lawyers, they're going to be able to find these loopholes? What type of balance are you bringing to the game at that point?
It's such a strange situation to be in college sports, where we see, like, even just the regular high school athlete to college thing, that's becoming more professional because of the NIL stuff, right? Because players are paid, because they have endorsement deals, because these teams have to treat them like professional athletes. They've got free agency with the transfer portal and all that kind of thing. But then to bring actual guys with pro experience back and just be like, yeah, no, he just gets a mulligan. He's going to do this over because he took a different path. It just feels like it flies in the face of not only the rules that have existed for so long, but also kind of like the spirit of the whole thing. Like, it's supposed to be, college basketball is supposed to be the next step after high school or the next step after junior college on your way to the pros, not a fallback if it doesn't work out in the pros.
Well, and I couldn't agree with that more. You know, I would take my experience. You know, I came from Brazil. You and I have talked about this offline, Sean. You know, basketball was my way out of Brazil. It was my way to be able to come to America and pursue my American dream. And, you know, the fact that I earned a scholarship and I was able to get through college for free, you know, that to me was the biggest accomplishment and the biggest inheritance my mom and dad could leave me. And am I one of those bitter guys that go, oh, geez, the guys should not be getting paid right now. I can't believe they're getting money. And I was pretty good. I probably would have commanded $1 million or more back in my day on NIL, right? And so I'm not against the players getting paid. I get that. The problem becomes, as you pointed out, Sean, when you actually have professional, not only experience, because you can make the argument that if you're a junior player practicing with a professional team, you're getting professional experience. But I'm talking about in the sense of, like, you actually played a game in a professional league. Not only a game, you played multiple games, you played multiple seasons on a professional league. That becomes a problem, right? And to your point, you know, it used to be that after high school, if you are very developed physically, but you're a little behind academically, you can go to a junior college, and then you can get your act together and you get to go to college. And then prep schools became something where if you weren't developed academically, maybe you weren't developed physically, you could skip junior college so you don't start your clock, and you can get started, you know, and you can go to a prep school. But now, to your point, I mean, there are guys that have gone through the draft. They're going undrafted. Yeah. They are even getting drafted in the second round, which is, you know, not a guaranteed contract. And then they're being eligible to play in college. That to me is insane, right? I think the NCAA has done a great job with allowing guys to test the waters, allowing guys, you know, to go all the way to the deadline just before the June draft. And I think that's a great step in the right direction. But allow a player to go fully undrafted, or even let a guy be drafted and come back and play, I think at that point, Sean, we're doing a disservice, right? I think the NCAA at a certain point in time, and like you told me last time, JT, if we're going to go down this rabbit hole, we're going to need a whole podcast of 1,000 episode series. I think the NCAA is trying to compensate on all of the extreme no's that they have been given players throughout the years. And I think now things have gotten out of hand. Mike Leach said once, the genie is out of the bottle. The genie is never never going back to the bottle. And I think that's okay. But you have to have certain guardrails. You have to have certain parameters in place so you can avoid all of this. I'm going to give you an example. The last thing I share, I know we're going a little bit over time, but for instance, BYU has two players right now that I personally wish they were playing much better, Alexei and Mihailo. And I wish that they were playing much better, and I've been hypercritical of them because they were playing multiple seasons at the professional level in Europe. And they were playing, with guys that I played against that are now in the EuroLeague, and you're playing at that level and you can't perform at the college level. What are you doing? And not only you're not performing, you're also getting paid to do this. And so, I like I said, I'm trying to say this from a non-blue goggles perspective because BYU has totally taken advantage of the loophole, and rightfully so. Like Kevin Young said, if the rule is open and we're doing everything by the book, we're not doing anything wrong. And I agree with him. Nonetheless, there has to be some parameters in place. So there is some form of fair play in place.
I couldn't agree with any of what you said, Mort. I actually thought you stated it perfectly when you said that the NCAA is overcompensating now because it was just no for so long. It's like being the strict parent and you realize, I've been smashing my kids' dreams for too long. I don't let them do anything, so I become overly permissive and I go too far on the other end of the spectrum. That's what the NCAA is doing right now. You're absolutely right about that. Jonathan Tavernari is our guest here for a couple more minutes. Red and Blue on the Sean O'Connell Show, brought to you by friends at Murdoch Ford Santa Quinn. All right, so you referenced this earlier. We got to talk about it before I let you get out of here. Utah BYU, a rivalry of the highest order in this state. And obviously the football rivalry has gone the way of the Cougs recently. The basketball rivalry was split last year, but what's it going to look like on Saturday?
I personally think that this Saturday, I think Utah steps up, and Utah plays better than it has been playing in a little while. And I think that's because it's a rivalry game. I think it's the first rivalry game for Alex. I think, fan support in Salt Lake is going to come out and show. And I think it's going to be a battle. It is a rivalry game. It doesn't matter how you want to slice it. Obviously, BYU are heavy favorites, and that's just based on how everything is going. But it's nonetheless a rivalry, and, everything can happen on a rivalry game. It's difficult to win a rivalry game by 20, 30 points, right? And that's because guys have pride and they represent their team. And so, Utah has had, Alex has done a better job of, Alex has done a great job on trying to do everything that he's been doing this year. But I think as of the last couple of months, things have picked up a little bit, right? Beginning of the season, the struggles with Weaver, a couple of losses, I think, to Cal Poly and to Grand Canyon that were so-so. And then now they're ramping up. Obviously, they lost to Arizona, but again, Arizona's the number one team in the country, and so that's understandable. And so the team keeps improving. I think it will be interesting a battle, between AJ and also a battle between, my gosh, his name just escaped me right now. He is Utah leading scorer, Terrence Brown. And, because Terrence is scoring, almost 22 points a game and stays with the ball in his hands a lot. And, it will be a great game. And, I'm excited to watch it.
JT, it's always great getting your time and your perspective. Are you going to be at the game on Saturday night?
Unfortunately, I'm not. My older boy, he's 13. He's part of a select basketball team. He's actually pretty good. I'm not exaggerating. And so I'm actually headed to Arizona this weekend. We're an Adidas sponsor team, and we have a session of the Adidas circuit. So sadly, I won't be there, but I'm looking forward to being at the BYU game in about a few weeks when they play in Provo. I'll actually be there in person.
Well, dad life is always more important, so I can appreciate that. Thanks for your time again. We'll talk soon, man.
Hey, I appreciate you guys having me. Have a good day.
Jonathan Tavernari, JT, brought to you by Murdoch Ford Santa Quinn on Red and Blue. We get the BYU perspective on things. And look, yes, BYU is going to be the heavy favorites at the Marriott Center. Excuse me, at the Huntsman Center and at the Marriott Center. They're they're going to be favorites when they play Utah this year. They are a loaded roster right now. We talked about some of the things that they're doing so well. Utah basically has to play a perfect game against this BYU team. Someone texted in. I want to make sure I shout it out. 1743. I'm very concerned about what might happen to Utah men's basketball Saturday at Huntsman. Look, you can't go into it with that mentality. Alex Jensen and company get to play free a little bit in this one. Yes, it's a rivalry game. There's always that context to it, but they are such big underdogs, and people are overlooking them so drastically, including, by the way, BYU will be overlooking them. You were able to get one against BYU last year. You could do it again this year. Hopefully it's the home contest. I don't like what Kebaketa is doing for BYU right now. I wish he was doing it in a Utah uniform. Yikes. All right. Daily Dump is coming next, and I think it's an appropriate place to put some of these sound bites. There are people who just want to flush away all memory of Kyle Whittingham. He was on Dan Patrick earlier today. You can listen to it right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Kyle Whittingham had some interesting comments on the Dan Patrick Show. We'll parse some of those out, some other stories I want to touch on as well as we get closer to the introductory press conference for Morgan Scalley. They're setting things up here at the Leighton Field Club, the VIP room. I'm seeing our guy Matt Smith over there. There's even some refreshments being put out. I have the advantage of I'm here before everyone else. So during one of these breaks, I might go and grab like whatever that is over there. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, I got some sound we're going to give you somewhat begrudgingly. Kyle Whittingham was on the Dan Patrick Show this morning and had a couple of different comments. Because we started the show talking about the NIL model and going through an exercise of how we would pay Utah football players on a $20 million salary cap. We'll get into that again in our next segment just a little bit here. But Kyle Whittingham talked about, well, he answered a question about whether or not the NIL model is sustainable or not.
It's not. It is not sustainable. There's no question about that. Something has got to give. And I think it's, within a 2 to 4 or 5 year window here, you're going to see a major overhaul of Division I football. I think it's going to become more of a minor league NFL model. I think you're going to see a salary cap, collective bargaining, players as employees. I think that all that's coming because you're exactly right. We can't maintain this pace. It's impossible.
Can we have a commissioner?
Yes, I would love one. I think that's in the cards as well.
But is everybody going to listen? Is the SEC going to listen, or the Big Ten? Or, I mean,
they have to. And if we get ultimately align with the super conferences and get things commissioned, have a commissioner that runs it all and put some teeth into it. I think that's the only way to survive. And you're already seeing private equity starting to enter the equation.
No.
So
I know.
It's crazy.
So I'm actually really interested about that in particular, because this is Dan Patrick talking with the former Utah head coach Kyle Whittingham, who he would always say this. He's been saying this for years. Oh, it's unsustainable. You can't keep going at this pace. And there was always like this kind of like subplot there, this context, where he was talking about it's not sustainable for everyone, right? But you would assume that people feel like it might be sustainable for Oregon, Miami, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas, etc. He's at Michigan now, and he said, no, it's still not sustainable. So that's if the arms race is too much even for the Blue Bloods, it's too much for everyone. And I echo what he was saying.
And OC, the end there, I wish Dan Patrick had followed up on the end there when he said, and now you got private equity getting involved.
Yeah.
Or Dan said, and now you got private equity getting involved. And he said, yeah, I know, it's crazy. I wish he would have followed up on that, knowing the recent news, the recent developments with Ocho Capital and that private equity firm becoming part of Utah athletics in the recent future, the near future here. That's gonna get going, because him saying, I know it's crazy. I mean, Utah fans listening to that now, listening to it on the Dan Patrick Show. I'm sure a lot of them went, yep. We knew that's why you're leaving. We heard him just say it's crazy, but I mean, he didn't really ask him about it. So I would have loved to hear Whit.
I would love to hear Whit actually give an honest answer, especially now that he's separated from the University of Utah, about whether that was a benefit or a cost for him. Because you could look at it both ways. He could look at it and say, well, great, I got more money coming in now that's going to help me. So it makes this whole model more sustainable potentially if you have enough influence with where the money's going to demand some for your football team. But we didn't get that. We didn't get that follow-up, like you said. Staying on the line of what changes need to be made in college football, he was asked about the calendar and whether or not it can or needs to be tweaked. We talked about Dan Lanning's thoughts on this. Here's what Kyle Whittingham had to say.
I kind of agree with Coach Dan Lanning at Oregon. It would be nice to have the season wrapped up by January 1st, especially the way the portal window is right now. I mean, it's chaos. And so I think there needs to be revamping not only of the system itself, but at least immediately the calendar. The calendar needs to be tweaked.
The calendar is, I think, if you end up with a commissioner of any kind or something that looks like commissioner, that is probably the first thing that needs to be addressed, because the calendar doesn't require – there's not going to be any lawsuits over a calendar changing. When you really start to get into the weeds of, hey, can we put a salary cap on people, collective bargaining, all that kind of stuff, that's when the lawyers get involved. You don't have to have that for a calendar change. You just say, hey, let's figure it out with our broadcast partners. Let's start the season a week earlier, whatever it is, and you figure it out.
I actually love Dan Lanning's idea and Whit kind of piggybacking off of that, saying he endorses it too. Because as I was watching the CFP quarterfinals on Thursday, almost a week ago, I'm going, this Rose Bowl pageantry, and people don't talk near as much about the Sugar Bowl pageantry. It's not quite the same, but the Sugar Bowl, the Rose Bowl is the granddaddy. It's the number one bowl game. Sugar Bowl is the number two, right? And has a lot of tradition and pageantry on January 1st as well. I'm watching those and I'm going, this should be the venue. These should be the venues for the national championship game, not the quarterfinals. What are we doing? And I'm like, it feels like you said, starting everybody on week 0 maybe, or playing the first round earlier in December if you can make that work with finals and all that, because that's part of why the academic part is part of why they don't play as much earlier in December, right? If you can make that work somehow, one of those two things, it feels like we should have these national championship games on New Year's Day, when everyone thinks of that. Everyone has always thought of that day as the crowning moment of college football for the longest time. And the Rose Bowl / the Sugar Bowl being the crown jewels of bowl season, like for them to be quarterfinals, not even semifinals, OC, it just feels wrong too from that perspective.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are getting behind the sort of offhand comments about the calendar that Dan Lanning made, and hopefully we can see something toward that effort sooner than later. All right. Funny to hear Dan Patrick ask this type of question to Kyle Whittingham, but he asked if Kyle Whittingham could take Ryan Day.
Could you take Ryan Day when you were younger?
When I was younger, or right
Could
now?
you take him now? So he's 46.
Yeah.
Could you take Ryan Day right now in the octagon?
In an octagon, well, there's one way to find out, I guess.
Just so you know, all right? Kyle Whittingham's answer to that question about anyone is he thinks he could take anyone right now. It's one of the things that you got to still love about Kyle Whittingham, even if you're really mad at him for leaving. He is, in his own mind and in the mind of everyone around him, he is an absolute alpha and a badass. And so he's not ever going to capitulate. Somebody asked him that question about me one time.
When you were still fighting?
When I was still fighting. And he was just like, I don't know. I haven't really seen him fight much, but I think I do okay. And it's like, dude, come on. I'm a professional. You're an old coach who's in good shape, but
that's hilarious.
That's just, it's a mindset, right? You never say, yeah, I'm scared of that guy if you're in that particular mindset. So.
Hey, wait, hold on. We have breaking news. Ryan Day says, I can't believe Kyle Whittingham said that about me in my program.
All right, this next one is the most relevant to Utah football, and the one I wanted to finish with in terms of the sound bites, at least, because there's all of these questions still swirling around the future for Devin Dampier and for Bert Ficklin, and a lot of us put a logical attachment to, well, what happens with his coaching staff? Do they have a quarterback at Michigan? And the quarterback at Michigan was the number 1 recruit in the country coming out of high school. His name's Bryce Underwood. You've all heard the name before. He had an okay freshman season. He looked very much like a freshman quarterback. But, the upside is still agreed upon almost universally by everyone in football. And Dan Patrick asked Kyle Whittingham, is Bryce Underwood staying?
We hope so. I think he's got a good vibe.
Wait, so you don't know?
Well, you don't know anything yet. I mean, shoot, it's the wild, wild west here, Dan. And so we think we're in a good place with Bryce. He's a terrific young man. I've sat down with him, and he is really the heart and soul of this football team. And I think we're making good progress towards that end.
So this was an interview done before Bryce Underwood made it official, made it public that he intends to return to Michigan, which matters for Utah football because if they've got the obvious candidate for their starting quarterback position in place, it is less likely that Michigan is a player for the services of Devin Dampier and for Bert Ficklin. It doesn't mean that nobody else is calling those guys, but this Utah football program has done a really good job so far of building a fence around some of its top young talents. By the way, this is from an hour ago. I saw that J.J. Buchanan has signed with Rosenhaus Sports as an agency.
As in Drew Rosenhaus.
As in Drew Rosenhaus.
Oh, no.
So remember that exercise we were doing about how much you have to pay players in order to keep them here? that price just went up probably $500,000 for J.J. Buchanan.
Is JJ going to be doing push-ups in his driveway now with his agent looking on? Oh no!
Drew Rosenhaus is the most cutthroat, ruthless, and look, it's Rosenhaus Sports. It's his agency, so it doesn't mean Drew Rosenhaus himself is representing J.J. Buchanan. These agencies have like a lot of junior agents and things like that they assign probably when you've got like the top pitchers in baseball and the top quarterbacks in football and that kind of thing. You're probably not spending a lot of time on a tweener tight end / wide receiver from the University of Utah. But the point still stands. The reputation, the name means something. And what the name means for teams is this is going to be more expensive. So there's that. Also, Kyle Whittingham gave that uncertain answer. Didn't know if Bryce was saying. And I think his points were well made. You just never know. It's a Wild West. There was a follow-up between Dan and the Danettes. Play that, too.
We taped that yesterday. 5 hours later, Bryce Underwood tweeted that he was staying at Michigan. But you could hear it in his voice when he said, is your quarterback going to be staying? He's like, I hope so. He didn't know. Yeah, Seton.
Do you think he didn't know?
Well, if he knew, then why wouldn't he say?
I mean, nobody knows. You can't say, yes, I know. You can't say definitively, he's coming back. You can't say definitively until the player himself announces, this is official, I'm done. You got to wait. And by the way, that's an age-old recruiting trick that if you announce something before the family gets to announce or the player gets to announce, another coach is going to come in and say, oh, hey, hold on. That was your thing to say. He said it for you. That's the lack of respect. So, look, the right thing, the correct protocol for everyone in the coaching world is to let the players make the announcement public on their socials, on their Instagrams, on their Twitters, whatever. That's the right thing to do.
And to that point, Seton, I cut it. I cut it after Dan says, well, if you knew, why wouldn't you say? Seton did come back and say, well, I assume he's wanting to let the player give the announcement. That seems to be the etiquette is how he put it. But I'll say this: the reason why I clipped that specific follow up from Dan and the Danettes immediately after they stopped or they finished the interview was because it screams of, oh, these guys don't know how Witt operates. These guys, like, we just spent the last 2 years.
You don't get definitive answers. You're not gonna. And they expect it right now, and they're going to learn to not.
Yeah, like he's going to keep things close to the vest. He's going to give non-answers or non-definitive answers. And he sort of said at the end of the last clip when he answered is Bryce Underwood staying, he sort of said, yeah, it looks like he's going to, but he didn't even quite say that. He just kind of got right up to saying that and then didn't. You know, like we know that about Witt. The national media is going to find out about Witt very soon, especially when it comes to I don't know what the Big Ten's policy is on injury reporting or availability reporting. The nation is going to find out how Witt operates and this kind of thing very quickly.
It's going to be
starting now,
and it's going to be a much, much bigger story because it's happening.
Absolutely,
where it's happening. All right, that is the Daily Dump brought to you by our good friends at Valley Plumbing and HVAC. So now the truck with the duck handles your drain cleaning, your plumbing, and your HVAC needs. So if you need a new furnace, this is the time of year where that might become pressing. You know what? Also a perfect time of year because we don't have a lot of snow. Have them check out your air conditioner, all right? Because you don't want to be calling them in late spring, early summer when it's getting hot and that thing craps out on you. It's too late at that point. It's now going to take a week, and it's going to be more expensive, and it's going to be a problem. So have them check out the whole system now, the truck with the duck. All right, we're going to get back into our salary cap exercise, okay? We're going to be GMs again. Jeff Schwartz is going to join us in about 15 minutes. But we went through the offense, and we got to a point where we were at $12 million with offense and defensive ends. Okay, so we're going to focus on the defense, see if we can keep it under the $20 million salary cap that I arbitrarily set for us, trying to be realistic. When we're talking about the important players that Utah, so far, it looks like they've done a really, really good job of retaining the guys that they want to retain. Can they stay under a salary cap and have a championship caliber team? We're going through that exercise next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792.1 FM. Jeff Schwartz joins us in about 15 minutes. We went through, to start the show today, it's from The Athletic. It's kind of the cost of doing business in the transfer portal right now. The minimum pay for certain positions, starters at certain positions, according to multiple sources in the industry. And look, there's a broad range here. We got to the quarterback range is $1 million to $4 million. Higher for the top guys. We've already seen that in the transfer portal. Brendan Sorsby was the number one quarterback rated. Very productive at Cincinnati. You knew he was going to land at one of the blue bloods. Instead, he landed at a new blood with Texas Tech to the tune of, it sounds like, about $5 million for Sorsby to play for 6 months at Texas Tech. Not a bad little gig. Well done for, I guess it's more like 9 months. But in any case, we went through the offense, and we added the second most expensive, according to this list, position group is the pass rushers, which it reflects exactly what the NFL salaries look like. Quarterbacks, top-paid players in the league, pass rushers, offensive tackles, wide receivers, the people in the passing game, right? We went through the offense, and we did some bargain basement prices on interior offensive linemen, on wide receivers, etc., and you still were already over halfway through the $20 million salary cap that I think is a kind of a realistic number for Utah football. Your revenue share is going to produce in the neighborhood of $16 million, and I think you could hopefully grab a few more commitments from boosters and NIL deals, like true NIL deals, where a car dealership or whatever says, yeah, I'll give you an extra $1 million if you can keep this guy here. If you can keep this quarterback here, you can keep this Kelvin Obot kid committed to the University of Utah. But we didn't even get to the defense, all right? So pass rushers are the highest paid on the defense. We were talking about Cash Dillon and Lance Holtzclaw, and we decided collectively being James and myself, we decided to commit, a couple $1 million to your edge rushers.
And don't sell us short, okay? We were officially, collectively, making these decisions on behalf of the Sean O'Connell Show.
Yes. So I went through it, okay? So I'm looking at the names. I'm looking at the price points that we're talking about with pass rushers, interior defensive linemen, linebackers, corners, safeties, people that are on this list. Okay, so we decided Cash Dillon, Lance Holtzclaw were the top candidates for NIL deals at the pass rushing spot because John Henry Daly's off into the transfer portal. Maybe you get him to come back. He's probably not playing much next year, if at all anyway. So $2 million. Bare minimum, in my opinion, to give your new position coach in terms of players. Right? $2 million. Good little groundwork there. Now, defensive tackle. We know you can't have two defensive tackles, especially the way that Morgan Scalley likes to rotate, especially the way that this defense needs to be run correctly. You got to have 4, right? And if you want to keep the promising young talent that you have on that roster right now, I think this is actually going to cost you, James, more like $3 million for your defensive tackle room. Okay, we know that they already locked up Sione Motuapuaka. I don't know how much money he got. Pupu Sepulona had a really great freshman year. Carson Calfusi, a lot of people think that he's got the highest upside of anyone in that group. Jonah Lea'ea is only a redshirt sophomore. He played a lot this year. He was kind of pressed into some service last year. Dallas Vakalahi, he could be back. He's fielding other offers, right? But I think you got to commit at least $3 million to your defensive tackle room because that $3 million really has to cover like 6 guys and at least 4. Is that enough?
Is that enough? Sorry,
I think it's not enough. I tweeted out. I actually think even at $3 million on your defensive line, you're underpaying. All right? That takes us.
Yeah, it feels like that. And how many guys are we saying we're spreading $3 million across the defensive tackle room?
It has to be at least 4.
4,
right?
Possibly
and more likely 6.
1 or 2 more. Okay. Yeah,
so,
that does feel a little low. OC.
And according to the New York Times, the list put out there by The Athletic, that is really low. $500,000 to $1.5 million for good defensive linemen, for starting caliber power forward defensive linemen. The cost of doing business just kind of is what it is, all right? Now let's get to the linebackers. I think the linebackers are another situation where you're looking at they could be a strength of this team. And look, Lander Barton underperformed this past year. I know he was being paid. Levani Damuni got hurt. He still had a really good year. Jonnu Hall emerged as your best linebacker in 2025. He's going to be your best linebacker and a priority for me on this defense to keep in 2026. Linebackers are kind of the most affordable starters, according to the Athletics list, but you're still talking about guys that are going to demand several $100,000 each. And I'm looking at Cyrus Polu. I'm looking at Reynolds. I'm looking at Jonnu Hall. I'm looking at Christian Ellis if he doesn't put on a ton of size and end up being a down defensive end. These are excellent linebackers with some eligibility left, with some youth to them. I'm committing at least $2 million. Again, bargain basement. I'm doing $2 million to the linebacker room, and now we're really starting to push it.
And you may have to your point about that being bargain basement, you may have to live with paying a guy like John O'Hall especially a little bit more. If you're not going to pay that much more over the bare minimum bargain basement kind of budget for the rest of the group, you may have to be like, okay, but we got to pay John O'Hall maybe even Trey Reynolds. That guy had a big impact in some as part of the linebacker rotation this year too, and I would think that he's going to have a ton of expectations going into this next year. So, yeah, that really might be the bare minimum of what you should pay for a linebacker room. You might have to be willing to be okay with a little bit more than that, if not a lot more.
Corners, you've got Don Saunders, you got Scooby, you got J.C. Hart, you've got Snowden's money potentially coming off the books, so hopefully that frees some things up for you. But this is just criminally low. I'm committing $1.8 million to the corners because I'm running out of money here to try to stay even near my cap. Remember, we spent over $10 million on just offensive starters with no depth. We're now approaching $10 million on the defense with minimal depth. We've accounted for a little depth on the defensive line because you have to. All right? So now, corners, just under $2 million. Safeties, Rabbit Evans, more eligibility because he's got the injury, right? Teo Johnson's gone. He's off into the transfer portal. Fine. Brock Fodoimoana, he's a guy that they really, really like. Nate Ritchie, they really, really like. They just got a kid out of the transfer portal. His name's escaping me right now. I'll look him up. Safety, I've got $1.5 million, all right, to try and spend on these guys. That's 3 guys. You need 2 starters, but you really need more. You really need kind of 4 safeties if you're going to play them. You at least need 3 because someone's going to have to go. And, by the way, I haven't even put down. So, James, just so you know, we're at $10.3 million for the defense. We're at $10.2 million for the offense. Just your starters, no special teamers, very little depth accounted for here. We're just over our $20 million salary cap, okay? And I haven't accounted for Celeste Moa because he's a flex player. He could put him anywhere, right? You got to pay that kid good money because Tennessee was going to offer him that. You got to pay Jackson Benny because he could be a corner, he could be a safety. He was one of the better defensive players on your team. I didn't even put him on our list because I don't know what he's going to play next year. I'm talking about Dylan Curtis, the kicker. He's back. You had to pay him to come back. I don't know how much that is. I'm putting all this out there not to be doom and gloom. I'm putting it out there to say it is a difficult job, and Morgan Scalley and his staff have done really good work with making sure there has not been an exodus into the transfer portal. That tells me a couple of things. The revenue sharing model is working as well as it can for Utah right now, and I believe what we're seeing because of the consistency that we appear to be able to hold on to with this roster, I think you're getting boosters that have been on the sidelines, to steal a quote from Cookie Man, who might be saying, all right, you know what, I'm going to step up. I'm going to help Morgan out in his first year. I was sick of Witt's stuff. I was sick of his communication style. I was sick of him playing the cards too close to the vest, not wanting to go play golf with me. Whatever it is, I think that you've got a little bit more support being deployed in Morgan's favor right now. If you're going to keep this roster, you got to have it. $20 million ain't enough. You probably need 30. Can you get close to that? Well, I think that they're doing as much as they can to keep these prices down. But, man, James, we just went underpay on everybody on the defense and everybody on the offense, with maybe the exception of your backup quarterback, and we're still pushing over a salary cap that goes beyond the revenue share number.
Well, and as I mentioned as we were finishing up in the opening segment, the offensive side of things, primarily the offensive side of things, defense is the identity of Utah football's program. Morgan Scalley is a defensive guy, of course. We all know that. It's going to continue to be the identity of Utah football's program, the signature part of Utah football's program. So, of course, they're going to have to pay more than, and they're going to want to pay more than just the bargain basement prices. So we're being ultra conservative on the defensive side, and in reality, it's probably going to push a lot higher than that, which I hope what you're saying about, you're speculating about the possibility of these boosters being re-energized and getting off the sidelines is true, because they're going to need it. Because especially on the defensive side, it's just, you're not going to get these players, new players especially, but you probably had to dedicate more than the 10 to 11 million than we just allocated, right?
It's a wild deal. It's a tough job right now, but the point is Utah is doing it. They're doing it. The boosters are stepping up. The athletic department is deploying the funds. The coaching staff has the rapport with the players, the relationships necessary. As far as we could tell, as far as it looks like right now, next year's roster, with the exception of John Henry Daly potentially being gone, and he was going to be injured anyway, with Smith Snowden being off into the transfer portal, you haven't lost anything that you feel like you can't replace. You can replace Smith Snowden. You can certainly replace Teo Johnson. I don't want to have to replace John Henry Daly. But, I mean, look what you've got, and look what it appears is coming back. The reality of the situation is a $20 million salary cap is a scary, scary number to have to deal with, and yet it looks like they are doing it. Fingers crossed, keep the optimism strong. If this portal window closes without a major announcement from any of the players that we've talked about today, do you understand what a massive victory that is for the University of Utah? Do you understand what that tells you about Morgan Scalley and the job he is doing 2 weeks in, not even 2 weeks in? Pretty incredible stuff. All right, we'll take a quick one here. We'll come back with Jeff Schwartz. He has a unique perspective on Jordan Gross, the new offensive line coach at the University of Utah. They were teammates in Carolina. We'll talk to him about that and much more on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show, hour number 3, and we welcome in my good friend Jeff Schwartz, football insider. I just call him that because he could talk about every level. Jeff, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, sir. My Ducks play this week still. We're still doing that. I decided I'm not going to the game. I'm going to stay home and watch it.
What are you doing? Your alma mater is in a semifinal game. Does this mean you're saving it for the national championship?
Oh, I'm going to Miami. Yeah, I'm going to Miami.
Okay, all right.
It's just like a hard sell with family. Like I already went to New York this week. It's like just hard sell with the family.
You know what I appreciate about you, Jeff, is that I feel the same way. I hate leaving my family any more than I have to. I don't like to, I travel enough for work that I don't feel good about saying, hey, I'm also going for this.
Correct.
You know what I like about you, though? Your wife doesn't feel that way. She's just like, Jeff, we're going skiing. I'm leaving you behind. I'm going on a trip. I'm leaving you behind. But you still feel that guilt, that dad guilt, even though you don't really have to.
But the skiing thing, like I get to just sit home and watch football by myself. So I get a win out of that. She is left alone with the kids. Like it's just Emmy has her first basketball game this weekend, and it just doesn't make sense. So I'm not going to do it. But we are, tell you what, man, the portal and injuries are killing us right now because, look, I know the kids have to go in the portal. This is not all like it is what it is. Like they have to leave. But we basically don't have a backup secondary. One of our running backs just left. We're out of players. Out of players. If anyone gets hurt on Friday, we are screwed. We might be screwed anyways, but we're definitely screwed if anyone gets hurt in this game.
We'll get to that game more in here in a second. I want to talk about an announcement that I was expecting, that I think you were expecting, that we kind of text back and forth about, that is official now. Jordan Gross, your former teammate, is the new offensive line coach at the University of Utah. And everyone listening to the show knows, like, one of the major selling points on bringing somebody like Jordan Gross in because he coached in high school, the number one recruit in the history of this program. Now he's the right guy. There were plenty of people, mostly from opposing fan bases, who were like, oh, you hired a high school coach. What are you doing? Do me a favor and just, if you can, give me an idea of Jordan Gross as a football mind. We saw what he is as a football body.
Oh, man, I have so much to say. So Jordan was my mentor. Like, he was the only reason – you playing music behind this? I like this. He was the only reason I made it in the NFL. And I don't know if that's a positive or negative. I'm sure he's telling that to recruits right now. The reason why I'm a good coach is because Jeff Schwartz made it in the NFL. But, like, he just got to the NFL, and him and Ryan Cole took me under their wing for whatever reason. They taught me how to train. He taught me how to prepare. He changed my stance for me, which was super helpful. He did everything that I needed to succeed in the NFL, and he's just so bright, and he was such a physical player. He was so smart. There's like levels to this, right? Like there are players that are Hall of Fame players, and I've played with some of those, and they're on a different level. And then there's guys like Jordan that are like Hall of very, very good, right? Multiple-time Pro Bowler, and just the way he went about preparing himself to play every game, the way he went about executing the game plan. His love for football, right? His teaching me, young player, really unmatched. And I remember, he got hurt 2009. He broke his leg. He did a tib fib, which is you break both bones in your leg. He did I think in November, and he was back in March, like beating us in running drills for off-season workout program. Just like a fantastic, like body. Like he just is a great football player. It was a ton of fun to be around him. I'm glad he's getting this job. He would text me like once a year to help him maybe draw some plays up for like some high school. It was fun to do that every now and then. But look, man, if he wants this job, he's perfect for it. He's going to do a great job in this role. I did text him the other day. He never answered me. Unfortunately, I'm sure he had better things to do to answer me. But our offensive line coach in Carolina it wasn't an old school coach, but old school personality. And he said some things that were not appropriate to say now. And one of them, and he had a deep like Northeast accent. He's from the Northeast. And he would always say, hit him with your purse. And so like you had a soft play, like Schwartz, hit him with your purse. but he said it in like a deeply Boston accent. I can't do the accent. Jordan can.
Amazing.
Jordan's good with voices, and so I texted him. I said, I don't think you can say this on your first day, but good luck on the job, anyways. But yeah, I mean, like if you had a soft play, he'd be like, hit him with your purse, Schwartz. Like, and obviously that's something you cannot say in 2026. But Jordan's been around a lot of different coaches and styles of football, right? I mean, what we did early in my career was not what he did with Cam Newton, right? So he's seen sort of different ways to coach the run game, right? Because offensive line coaches are, they're one of their big duties is they're going to handle the run game. So he's seen a run game with a Cam Newton, right? He was part of that offense. He's seen a run game that was more traditional with D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart. He's seen a lot of different types of ways to win in football, and that I think will be important at Utah. So obviously the connection to your recruit is important. I would imagine that played a big role in maybe getting him the job. But if he wants this job, I mean, I don't know how you tell him no. So very happy for him, and excited to see what he does in that role.
So there's a new article out on the Athletic that was setting kind of the salary ranges for the transfer portal players that have been on the move. Insane. So far, and I was looking at it, and we're kind of like doing this exercise. Okay, who do you have to pay this on the Utah roster? Just the guys that haven't already put their names in the portal to leave. The guys that you haven't gotten out of the portal. They made a couple announcements on that today, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, man, if you go by the Athletics numbers, just to field starters with absolutely no depth, no special teams, you don't pay your kicker a dime, whatever. Yeah. Like. You're looking at you gotta spend $25 million.
Yep.
And $25 million. We've been told $25 million might be a bridge too far for a lot of Big 12 teams. I know it's not for your Oregon Ducks, but there's even teams in the Big 10. I was looking at Rutgers is paying a wide receiver $1.7 million. I'm just looking at this and I'm just going like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with all that in mind, how important is the personnel manager, the general manager, the cap guy in college football right now, even if those athletic estimates are even close to accurate?
Well, I think a couple things are very important. One is obviously your budget, right? And setting that and knowing what you can afford to pay each guy. That's that becomes very important. But also, look, I say this often. It is true though, and I know people don't like to hear it, but not every player goes somewhere for all the monies, right? Now the money has to be adequate, but this is where relationships matter, right? It's where does your NIL program deliver the money on time? Does it deliver it to where it's supposed to go? Like all those things are true, right? How the contracts written, what are the obligations for the NIL? So those things, I say this a lot. Like Oregon doesn't pay the most for everyone, right? They don't, but they have the best functioning NIL program in the country. And that goes a long way. Like players knowing they're getting the money that they have, that they negotiated. Players know that they're working with a professional organization. I think all those things matter. So, yeah, the money certainly matters for players, but all the other things do as well. The relationships with coaches are very important in this discussion as well. And so, hopefully Scally can build those relationships. Again, like going back to Jordan, like having a Pro Bowl, all pro caliber offensive lineman who's is he a College Football Hall of Famer? Or Utah Hall of Famer, something like that. Yeah, like having that in the building. Look, maybe you take a little bit less at Utah to be with a guy like that, right? Like those things, I think they all matter in the end. And Utah's an established program. There are programs like Texas Tech, for example, that were not established in the way they are now that had to pay a lot for players because they, like David Bailey, I would imagine, had plenty of offers elsewhere, right? And playing in places that have proven they've developed defensive ends. And that kid's amazing. But, so you have to overpay, I think, if you're Texas Tech, where I don't think you have to overpay if you're Utah, right? Like you just sell what your program is. If they don't want to come here, that stinks. It's too bad, but it's not your problem, I guess, in the end, if you're offering them market value and they go somewhere else for even more money. So I think it's sort of all relative for the program. But yeah, I mean, you need $20 million. I mean, that's what it seems to cost at the minimum now. Plus, you pay your coaches and your facility and your travel. It's a lot of money, man.
Yeah, there's just a lot going on right now in the college football world, and it's been interesting for us here in Salt Lake City to see kind of this media tour that Kyle Whittingham is going on. He appears to be kind of refreshed, rejuvenated. He's on all the big shows, and even at Michigan, he was asked by Dan Patrick about the sustainability of this model, this spending model. And even with now the Michigan resources, he's like, no, can't stay this way. So I think that tells you something. If you're at a blue blood program and you're, for the first time in your career, you're experiencing what that looks like, and you're still looking at it and going like, can't keep this up though, it probably tells you a lot about the state of college football.
So when we first were on the radio when this happened, right? I remember we talked about the idea of like there being a breaking point, right, where the return on investment just isn't there, and boosters decided to pull back, and it has not happened yet. I thought it would. I thought it would happen much sooner than this, but clearly, like, and you see what Texas Tech did. I think you're sort of like all in on that idea. Like, look what they did, right? They bought themselves a big roster, and they went from being basically like not involved in the college football playoff to being super involved in the college football playoff. So I think that the Texas Tech model is going to make people maybe more enthusiastic to pay money now. I mean, look, Sorsby is not worth $5 million a year. I don't care what you're just not. But obviously, like, what are you going to do? I mean, that's what Tech's willing to pay him. That's what he's going to make. And maybe if Texas Tech goes 9-3 next year, they regret paying him. But like, I don't know why they would regret that at the moment, right? Like, there's no reason to regret that at the moment. So I think it's going to change at some point. I don't know when, though.
I don't know when. Again, we talked so many times about closing Pandora's box and unringing the bell, and the time for that has passed in college football. So it's going to take another reorganization, and then it'll be collective bargaining, and that's a totally different thing to examine. We won't get into that here on the show today. Jeff Schwartz is our guest, by the way. We're talking about the college football landscape ahead of the introductory press conference for Morgan Scalley, which happens, and we will carry live right here on ESPN 700 and 92 FM right after my show goes final. In fact, we're going to end it a little bit early just in case Morgan does what Kyle Whittingham does and starts talking like 3 minutes before the top of the hour. We're going to make sure that we're covering it. There's Jordan Gross right now. He's standing in front of me, Jeff. You want me to say something to Jordan for you?
Yes. Say, Schwartz says hit him with your purse. No,
I'm going to try and wave him in here to see if I can get him to say something mean to you. But in any case, we're Morgan Scalley takes over. Did you ever play for or spend any time around the guy who followed the guy, either as a player or as a coach in your career?
No. I mean, I was there when Chip got to Oregon, but he was the OC first, right? So Bellotti was there my entire time. I mean, I've had new coaches. Ron Rivera was a new coach in the NFL, but it's not like he followed anyone specifically, right? He just was hired. I've done that before, but I've never had like hire from within type of coach in any situation.
It's a lot of pressure. He seems to be handling pretty well a week into the job, and we'll see what the rest of this transfer portal window looks like for Morgan Scalley. And obviously, when you get into the real thing next year and you got to start competing, and you got to start competing again with the Texas Techs of the world. BYU continues to spend a lot of money on their program, et cetera, et cetera. Back to the college football playoff. Your Oregon Ducks are in a semifinal. Ole Miss is one of the most fascinating stories right now for me because, I mean, we're getting like game week. We're getting, we'll let the offensive coordinator stay and continue to call plays for Ole Miss. And you're getting all these transfer portal stories about how Lane Kiffin tried to get all of his players to follow him, and they're not. And, in fact, some LSU guys are now going back to Ole Miss. Can Ole Miss compete still? Can they didn't think they were going to win last week. Can they win this week?
So I think the number one reason why Lane Kiffin allowed his coaches that are now at LSU to coach at Ole Miss was I don't think he thought they'd make it this far.
Right.
And obviously now he has. And now it's like, oh, wait, our coaches aren't going to be here for transfer portal and having college visits and whatnot. And, I mean, that's unfortunate, obviously, that this is the case, but this is what the schedule is now, right? This is what the schedule has become. And so, look, I think the OC is going to stay, but it seems like the running back coach is gone. I mean, it just seems like an entire mess, man. They've done. Look, I thought Georgia would smoke them. So that's the one game I got wrong this week. I thought Ohio State would be close, a close win. So a loss didn't surprise me very much, and I thought obviously Oregon would win. I thought Indiana would win pretty handily. So, dude, look, Chambliss has been really good. He's improved. He's in D2 last year at this time, which is kind of wild to think. So his ability to just continue to get better each and every week. Their defense is not very good, but they did enough against Georgia, right? They made enough plays. So incredible story, man. Incredible story what Ole Miss has done with all the drama around them, with what Lane tried to sabotage them. So hat tip to them, man. Fantastic job.
Can anyone beat Indiana?
I mean, I hope so. I would,
Who's a better way to ask an Oregon Duck? Who is best equipped to beat Indiana of the remaining field?
I mean, it's probably us or Miami. I mean, I don't think Ole Miss can do it. Look, as bad as we played the first game, it was 20-20 in the fourth quarter, right? And we allowed 340 yards, which isn't a ton. We ran the ball really well. Just didn't run the ball enough. The thing that I think the biggest problem for us is that in our bigger games this year, so Penn State, Iowa, the first Indiana game, we have not been as crisp in Texas Tech. We have not been as crisp on offense as I think you have to be to win a game like this. I'm not saying you can't be. Like we can just be better, like not have bad snaps, right? And like not do some other silly things that feel like very self-enforced wounds. But against Indiana, I mean, they thrive on forcing those, then of course taking advantage of those problems. And so we have to just avoid that. We have to run the ball a bunch and avoid the dumb things that happen. I think our defense has gotten better this year, so I think that we can potentially hold them, down a little bit. I put the stat out the other day. Lanning's now 40. I think it's 48-7 now. He's, I think, now 31-0 when his team has allowed less than 30 points in a game.
Wow.
They have not lost one time when his team has allowed less than, like, the losses are all Indiana, 30-20, right? Washington scored in the 30s 3 times. The Beavers scored 34. Georgia scored 49. Ohio State scored 41. Those are 7 losses. Like, so if we can hold them, like we've been in that range now. Again, there's some injury rumors about our running backs, and it's not great, and we're down some depth pieces, so we'll see how it goes. But I mean, the case for Oregon is that they clean up some of the offensive issues, and that, look, I mean, you can make a case. I'm not saying that it's a great case. So I'm an Oregon fan. That that like Indiana, are they going 16-0? Like, is that 16-0, Sean? That would be the best season of all college football history. They've won every close moment so far this season, and just won the biggest game in program history. The one thing about Oregon that I've liked so far is this offseason, or this postseason, is they have very clearly planned their whole season around playing in the playoffs, right? And so I like that. Like, they've expected to be here. They've talked about wanting to be here. Doesn't mean you're going to win, but I like the mindset, at least, from Oregon. So, look, man, it'll be fun. We'll see what happens. If they win, I'll be in Miami for the championship game. Absolutely. That'll be a ton of fun. But looking forward to it Friday. I feel like, lastly, it's a little bit of house money for us. Dante Moore, I think they expect to come back at this point. Our team is going to be much better next season. We're returning, like, I think, everyone who can come back except our tight end. And it's going to be it's an older team next season. So I think that this feels like just like house money. Now, of course, I want to win. Let's do it now. But it does feel like, if we lose this year to Indiana, who wins a championship, congratulations to them. But we should be back next year.
I want Dan Lanning to be the college football commissioner because he was asked and he gave the best answer we've heard. He was just like, end the season on January 1st.
I agree.
Start in week 0, take away a bye week, play every week during December, don't give up all those Saturdays to the NFL, and let's finish this thing. And, he's a compelling guy when he talks. So, commissioner, let him quit at Oregon and make him the college football commissioner.
Look, I think that there's a little bit of like self-promotion there because I think he would have loved the Oregon play a home game last year. And that wasn't the case. And it's pretty easy to say, yeah, we'll go play Texas Tech. Why not? When they're not doing it. But I do agree with the schedule part of it. Like the schedule part of it, look, man, it's NFL postseason time. The fact that college football is still playing, I think is a problem. And they're not even done yet, right? But like this week has been dominated in sports by NFL playoff talk. Like that's what this time of year is right now. So I just expect there to be some more changes. And the last thing too, like again, the calendar, Sean, it just can't be this way. You can't have the portal right now and make this all. It feels very difficult to do all this all at once. So at this January 1st, open the portal up, and then everyone's happy.
How do players feel when a kicker misses what should be a routine kick to keep you out of the playoffs?
Oh, Loop the other day. I mean, I don't know, not great. It's you know what's so interesting? It's like the internet is like it's like, oh my God, poor kicker. I'm like, do your job. I mean,
no one says poor offensive lineman when he gives up a sack.
Correct.
Why whenever someone's setting a sack record is it unimpressive? Why is it not like a real sack every time that the record's on the line? It's like the quarterbacks like take a pseudo dive.
Okay, so the Shanahan play, the Michael Strahan play showed up today on my timeline because it was today, like whenever 20 years ago. Favre took a complete dive on that play, right? He rolled out to his right and just fell down. And Strahan didn't even beat anyone. He just was standing there. Myles Garrett, legitimately beat Orlando Brown. And Burrow had nowhere to go, so he just didn't want to get hit by Myles Garrett. They're not even comparable at all.
Okay. But what the Joe Burrow play, I kind of he sort of stopped his forward motion and ended up going back into Myles Garrett's arms. But I didn't blame him because if he kept going forward, 93 was going to get him.
Correct.
So there was nothing he could do in that one. It just isn't fun when they just do it that way instead of getting lit up. You know what I mean?
Correct. But Garrett, dude, what an incredible accomplishment for him. People just kind of don't want to give guys credit when records like this happen. Strahan was like, he did it in 17 games. He did. You're right. You did in 16 games. Absolutely right. But also, Favre took a dive for you, so that also happened.
All right, dude. We'll let you go. Always appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. We got another. Oregon's had portal commitments from just kickers and long snappers so far.
Perfect. That's what you need, specialists.
And it's all I just saw announced we got another portal kicker. It's awesome. We're we're gonna turn to Utah just punts and kicks.
Let that be the complete backbone of your team.
For years, that's what you guys did the best in the country at.
That is true. That is true.
For you, the entire time we did radio, you were the number one special teams team in the country.
That's correct. It was 3 back-to-back Ray Guy Award winners. Nobody else gets to say that.
And we had on the former punter all the time, right?
Yeah, Tom Hackett.
Yeah, Tom Hackett. He was awesome.
That's our guy.
Yeah. You guys were trying. I would love if we were great at kicking every year. It's a big benefit.
It's not. It's an often overlooked part of the game. It's kind of like offensive line play. You know this better than I do.
Right.
It's often overlooked until it's a problem, and then you're just like, what the hell happened here?
I would imagine Illinois State wish they were better at kicking field goals last night.
I guarantee that's the case.
Did you watch that game? How crazy was that? That was insane.
We haven't even talked about that game yet today.
Montana State tried to lose that game. Tried their best. Illinois State wouldn't let them.
Hey, Montana State, that was the first championship they won in 41 years, and they've been like a top 10 team for decades. They've been in the national championship game 4 times. Good for them finally getting one.
Sounds a little bit like Oregon. Interesting. Maybe we could both win this year.
All right, dude.
All right. Have a good press conference. Tell Jordan I say hi if you see him.
Yeah, I'll see him.
All right. Bye, guys.
That's Jeff Schwartz, former Jordan Gross teammate. And I'm glad he said what he said because, if you're able to mentor teammates, there's a little bit of coach in you already. And he, by the way, he was actually coaching in high school. And most importantly, the guy just knows the sport of football, and he has been an understudy as a player or whatever capacity to great, great coaches, higher level coaches than a lot of people that are on the staff around him. He hasn't done the job, and there's going to be things to learn. But, man, I love Jordan Gross as the offensive line coach at the University of Utah. All right, another couple announcements look like they're coming for the University of Utah in regards to players maybe deciding to run it back. There's one for you that I think because of the injury, we didn't really talk about him at all. We didn't talk about him in our hypothetical salary cap conversation that we just had, but we'll give you an announcement for one Ute, and actually there's a big Coug who said he's running it back also. We'll give you both of those next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700. 92.1 FM. North Texas defensive end Ethan Day has committed to Utah from the transfer portal. The Lucas Samsula cat we already announced earlier, coming down from Wyoming. Let me just pull up some Ethan Day stats if he had any this year for North Texas. Started all 13. This is a good pickup. 48 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, and a fumble recovery, playing defense for that North Texas team. Players starting to arrive for the introductory press conference for Morgan Scalley. Coaches have already been here. Boosters, invites only, I think, was the situation for the boosters at this introductory press conference, which we will carry live right here. We're going to end our show just a touch early today so that we can get into the press conference on time. And Spence is going to be broadcasting live from the Field Club as soon as the press conference is over. But big day for Utah football as Morgan Scalley is officially announced as the new head coach, taking over for his longtime mentor, Kyle Whittingham, who's now at Michigan. And Utah getting some guys in the transfer portal, making those announcements today. Dadron Zipperer is running it back. He was injured most of the year, so we didn't see a lot of him, but good to hear that Zip is coming back and hopefully will be a big part of the offense moving forward. Celeste Moa, according to insiders, is enrolled at the University of Utah right now, and no indication that he's planning on going anywhere. So a lot of good things happening. And look, there's some people that are, especially on Twitter, misunderstanding kind of the whole point of my exercise with the salary cap today, in that it's really, really hard to just be a team that can sort of just pay market rate if we trust what the Athletic and their sources have on the market rate on players, and just say, all right, we're paying top dollar for every position. Utah can't do that. They don't want to do that. They don't want to be a program that is driven by finances and money and things outside of the culture. The mercenary programs have done pretty well this year, but I don't know that they're going to win. Whoever ends up winning the national championship is going to be that. Like, Texas Tech deserves credit for what they did because they somehow became a mercenary program that also played well together. Like, they had real team chemistry and culture. I didn't think those two things could coexist. I was wrong. Texas Tech proved that. Now, what does it mean for Utah football? Well, if your $20 million salary cap, and I think that's a pretty realistic number, is sort of conservative when you talk about the competitors that you have to deal with in the Big 12 Conference, it means that you as a coaching staff have to do a better job than your counterparts. You have to have a better culture. You have to have better recruiting relationships. You have to have better development. You have to have better reasons for people to stay at the University of Utah than all of the folks that are calling their agents have reasons for them to go. And all indications point to the fact that Utah's done an incredible job with Morgan Scalley and the assistant staff that he has put together. They've done an incredible job of keeping what we know of this roster together. And looks like they're bringing in some really interesting talents to add to the roster. I started the show this way. I will end the show this way. The angst and the worry and the demise of Utah football because Kyle Whittingham left and he took Lucas Powell with him and he took Jason Beck with him, greatly exaggerated. All right? Everyone became so enamored with the fact that Jason Beck was the reason for Utah football's success when he was here for a year, and he did an unbelievable job. We shouldn't take that away from him. But it's the players, and most of those players are going to be part of this program moving forward. This is a huge inflection point for Utah football today until the close of the transfer portal, and the management of that right now so far to this point. I don't want to get any overly congratulatory or put carts before horses, but it has been handled as well as it can be handled by a guy in Morgan Scalley who is the coach in waiting for a reason. He is the next head coach for a reason. He was the heir apparent for all good reasons. Morgan is that dude. And just because we did the thing as a fan base and we did the thing even in the media where it's just like, oh, I don't know that guy that well. I don't know McGivern as well as I know Jonathan Smith. I don't know what McGivern's reputation is as much as I know what Jonathan Smith's reputation is. I use that as an example for good reason because I actually think McGivern is a way better hire than Jonathan Smith would have been, even though he doesn't have the same resume, doesn't have the same credential necessarily from a former player standpoint, and certainly not from I've been a head coach in the Pac-12 before standpoint. Like, Jonathan Smith is really good at running the football and having overperforming offensive linemen and overperforming running backs, and I don't know so much about the quarterbacks. Kevin McGivern is really, really good at getting the most out of wide receivers and quarterbacks, and that is what college football is about right now. And those positions cost a lot of money, and to get talent here or to keep talent here at those positions could cost you just an insane amount of money. I went through an exercise where I said, all right, what if you pay this, this, and this based on the athletics pricing sheet effectively? And we're talking about a salary cap that is not anywhere near the top range of the college football world, and yet Utah looks like they're going to be able to field a competitive roster next year with somewhere near like medium level spending. That is because of your culture. That is because of your coaches. If your guys are getting phone calls and those phone calls are saying, hey, we'll give you $750,000 to come here. We'll give you $1 million to come here. We'll give you $500,000 to come here. And you're saying, we can't quite pay you that, but we still want you to stay here. And they stay. That's because your program is something. That's because this new head coach and his staff have the right relationships and are doing the right things. You love to see it. I'm looking out at a room right now full of boosters, full of dignitaries, full of players, full of coaches who are all incredibly optimistic and buzzing right now with what Morgan Scalley should be able to do as the head coach of this program. He's just that guy. And yes, you lost some things you didn't want to lose. And yes, it's hard to turn the page after 21 years of success. This is going to be a new era of Utah football that really is the best of all worlds because Morgan Scalley, and I made this point before, he's connected to every great memory that you have in college football as a Utah fan. Morgan Scalley was part of that, or was coached by someone who was part of that, was attached to that somehow, right? Somebody on his staff was a part of those great moments. That great number 10 ranked Ron McBride coach team, Luther Ellis is part of this staff, okay? You started to win those rivalry games again. Sharif Shaw was on those teams. He's on this staff. Morgan Scalley, when Urban Meyer came in, Morgan Scalley was a foundational piece of that defense, and he was a captain on the undefeated Fiesta Bowl team. Morgan is that dude. Morgan is the guy connected to the era of success that you want to remain a constant at Utah football. He has not only been associated with it, he has been in it for all of the good stuff. Some of the bad stuff, some of the hard seasons, and he learned his lessons through those like you're supposed to. But Morgan is better equipped in an experience, in a connection way than Urban was. He's more equipped in a I played for this team way even than Kyle was. And now he's got a staff around him that he believes in, and we should believe in too because Morgan does. You trusted this guy to be the one who several years ago you said, that's the guy to carry the load moving forward when Kyle Whittingham is done. That's the guy I believe in. That's the guy that I trust. Now it's time to put the trust in him. I'm very excited to hear what his comments are. I'm very excited to see what he can do with this roster. I'm very excited to see when it all nets out, like how much Utah actually spends on this roster. Because if they can win 10 games next year on a $20 million cap, do you realize what a coaching job that is in the modern era of college football? Do you know what that actually looks like? Pretty impressive stuff so far. Let's keep our fingers crossed it stays that way. Let's keep our fingers crossed that the continuity roster-wise that appears to be likely becomes a reality when this college football transfer portal window closes. All right, we're gonna finish it up. We're gonna send it to the drive, but the start of the drive is going to be the official press conference for Morgan Scalley, his actual introductory press conference as he takes over. And I said it at the beginning of the show, I'll say it again. I thought it was a little bit strange, the timing of it, but now I don't. Because we have a week's worth of work to already judge Morgan Scalley by, to ask him questions about, and to see, I think, for this fan base, to build a little confidence in his abilities before we just throw him in front of a podium and say, hey, what? Well, Kyle's gone, now what? Kyle's gone, now what? Now it can be more about Morgan Scalley, the next head coach. All right, Brian Regan tickets at the Delta Center on Valentine's Day, 877-353-0700. We talked about Jordan Gross with Jeff Schwartz, and he is at present the highest drafted offensive lineman in the history of Utah football. That might change this coming spring when Spencer Fano, the Outland Trophy winner, is eligible for a draft. But 877-353-0700. If you want tickets to the Auto Expo and to the Brian Regan show on Valentine's Day at the Delta Center, tell me which pick Carolina selected Jordan Gross with. 877-353-0700. All right. Porter's going to do a little tomfoolery, changing machinery over, and you will hear Morgan Scalley's introductory press conference next. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll do it again tomorrow on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.